Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Powell. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the board vice president of the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition. And first I wanted to acknowledge that I live in Biddeford here, and I'm standing on Wabanaki and Pequawket territories. And if you're interested in learning more about the Indigenous territory that you may be standing on, you can check that out with the website here, nativeland.ca, and Kara can also put that in the chat. So we are the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition, or MSBC as we call it, and we're a nonprofit that became established as a 501c3 in 2017. We have a board of 11 incredible leaders, and our vision is that when every baby receives human milk, we'll be a healthier Maine. Our mission is that we are a welcoming and broad network of people supporting families who value human milk and breastfeeding. Together, we work to enhance the culture of breastfeeding around the state through professional networking, advocacy, and education. We also have several committees, and we're always looking for volunteers. So if you're interested, again, Kara will put in the chat this link to fill out this form if you wanted to be on one of our committees. And we are also doing a raffle during World Breastfeeding Month. And so you can enter that raffle to win a $100 Visa gift card. Just by attending the webinar today, you're automatically entered. And then if you wanted to increase your chances, you can purchase more raffle tickets through our Venmo at Maine Breastfeeds or our PayPal. And we'll be using the email you used in Eventbrite. So if that doesn't match your name that you registered with, or it's not clear, you can message Kara privately and let her know that that email is a bit different than your name. That's how we will use it to match up and enter you in the raffle. And next, we wanted to thank all of our partners. We have a few different levels. So we have our annual patron partners, our supporters, our advocates, and then our event supporters. They're making this webinar series possible in addition to helping us reach our mission and our other strategic plan goals. So thank you very much to everyone on this page. And then we also just wanted to say that we're very excited. We have 3 more World Breastfeeding Week webinars. We have today, the Infant Sleep 101. And then tomorrow we have a panel that's about tongue tie, and it has 5 different providers on it. And then on Thursday, we have our coalition meeting with a presentation on solo lactating parents. So you can register for any of these through the same Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition Eventbrite page that you used to register for this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you at those other ones. And then next, I just wanted to welcome Jenna. Jenna Marion, she, her, is a mom of 3 young boys, an IPSP certified pediatric sleep consultant, an IACSC member, a certified lactation counselor, owner of Remedy Pediatric Sleep Coaching, board member of the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition, and an infant sleep instructor for Maine Health. After leaving the corporate world as a project manager for a nonprofit health information and technology association, she immersed herself in the new mom community and found her passion for supporting new parents. Jenna lives in Southern Maine with her 3 sons, Michael, Jack, and Matthew, her husband, Jeff, and her miniature dachshund, Harmony. So I'm gonna have Jenna share her slides now. And like I said, at the end, we'll do Q&A, so we can leave that for then. You can also put things in the chat throughout if you would like to. And we are recording this, so if you didn't want your face on the recording, you can just take it off video. I will stop sharing. You can go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Amanda, for that lovely introduction. And as Amanda mentioned, I am the mom of 3 little boys, which is my most important job title she listed. And, oh, let's see. And as she also mentioned, in my previous life, I worked in marketing and project management for the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society, based out of Chicago. And once I left the corporate world after the birth of my first son, I quickly realized my passion for supporting new parents. And what better way to support parents than to help them and their children get better sleep, right? So I am extremely happy to be here with all of you today. Becoming a new mom was hard for me. My first son, Michael, and I persevered through 3 months of breastfeeding hardships, weight loss, thrush, supplementation, the full gamut. And when all seemed like things were looking brighter, the 4-month sleep regression hit hard. He was down to about 2 wakings a night, and then we went away for Thanksgiving and he started sleeping like a newborn again, waking up every 2 hours. On top of the fact that he was only taking 30-minute naps, I was exhausted. I spent countless hours in the middle of the night Googling the ins and outs of infant sleep. It eventually paid off, but I do not wish the amount of stress and anxiety I endured on anyone. Through my research, I found there to be a major gap in postpartum education. And while new parents may receive education around safe sleep, we are often left to our own devices and the internet to find best practices to get our babies sleeping well and sleeping enough. This overwhelm that comes with trying to figure it all out on our own, plus lack of sleep, only increases the chances of susceptibility to postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, in addition to the likelihood of resorting to unsafe sleep practices. My mission is to help parents feel empowered, confident, and encouraged through the implementation of safe sleep improvement strategies in a breast and chest feeding friendly way, while providing the support and encouragement they all deserve every step of the way. So today I will be reviewing some of the basics of baby sleep science, steps that parents can take to promote babies' independent sleep, ways to support breastfeeding while also implementing safe sleep practices, as well as talking about realistic sleep expectations. So this is a question I get asked a lot and was made famous by Chrissy Teigen. Why is it so hard to put someone who was already sleepy to sleep? The best way to answer this is to familiarize yourself with some of the basics of infant sleep science, starting with how babies develop their circadian rhythm. Newborns have an underdeveloped circadian rhythm without any sense of day and night. This really only begins to develop around 6 weeks old, along with the hormone melatonin. Melatonin is made by the pineal gland and helps our bodies know when it's time to sleep and wake up. Normally, the body makes more melatonin at night, so levels start to go up in the evening once the sun sets, and then they drop in the morning when the sun rises. And there are several ways you can help your baby develop their circadian rhythm to avoid any of that day-night confusion. When you start the day with your baby, open the shades, do the first morning feed in natural daylight, and get outside for some fresh air. Then for naps and nighttime, we draw the shades and use white noise to block out any and all distractions. With time and when it's developmentally appropriate, babies will be able to differentiate day and night, as well as compartmentalize day sleep versus night sleep, meaning they will know the difference between a nap and bedtime. Babies need a lot of sleep. Between 3 and 6 months, the amount they need drops from about 14 to 17 hours a day down to about 12 to 15 hours per day. And about half of infant sleep is REM sleep. And when the baby is in a state of REM sleep, that is also an ideal time to feed, especially if the parent is breast or chest feeding and trying to get that good wide latch. REM is an incredibly important phase of sleep, especially for infants. Studies have shown that humans have trouble retaining information in their short and long-term memory without the support of REM sleep. And as babies learn so much every day, it's important their brain has time to process it all. Research also indicates that the REM sleep stage is when neural connections go into overdrive, meaning that REM promotes development. And finally, there is believed to be a link between REM sleep and coping mechanisms. And coping skills are particularly important for babies to develop, as they will aid in everything from communication development to executive functioning. Bottom line, restful, restorative sleep is so important for so many reasons. So this right here, the infant sleep cycle, is really the crux of everything when it comes to understanding what's happening with the child's brain at this time. Around 4 months of age, but really as early as 8 to 10 weeks, sleep begins to mature, and the pattern goes from a more constant state, cycling between active and quiet sleep, which is how newborns sleep, to a more dynamic cycle with these 5 different stages. Again, this is a permanent change in the baby's brain, and sleep will often not get better unless some changes are made to the baby's sleep habits and routine. The infant's daytime sleep cycle typically lasts anywhere from 30 to 50 minutes. Ideally, in order for any one nap to be considered fully restorative, we want to see the baby go through at least 2 full sleep cycles. Developmentally, babies are more apt to naturally link these sleep cycles, meaning they rouse from stage 5 here and go back into stage 1, closer to about 5 months old. However, if you have a baby that is younger than 5 months, it's still important to practice setting the foundations of independent sleep by setting up a pre-sleep routine that includes putting your baby down awake, if this is your goal of independent sleep. If the baby is able to fall asleep independent at the start of the nap, they will then have a better chance of falling back to sleep once they've completed the first sleep cycle. Now, notice I didn't say drowsy but awake. So that is a term that we hear a lot in the baby industry, drowsy but awake. Now look at stage 1 of this cycle. Eyes are heavy and in and out of closing. That seems drowsy, right? But in fact, they have already disengaged with the world around them and they have entered their sleep cycle. So if a baby was in arms at stage 1 and they're laid down for sleep, they will more likely rouse from stage 5 and think, hey, I wasn't here when I fell asleep. Where am I? They may then call out for a parent to replicate that previous environment in order to fall back to sleep. So same goes for night sleep. While the daytime sleep cycle averages 30 to 50 minutes, the nighttime sleep cycle is typically 1.5 to 2 hours long. So if you're struggling with your baby, more specifically a baby older than 4 months, waking every 2 hours at night, it doesn't necessarily mean they are waking due to hunger, but instead could be struggling with falling back to sleep independently between sleep cycles. Now, babies will wake up every couple of hours. We all wake up in the middle of the night, whether we realize it or not. We as adults tend to just roll over, fluff our pillow, and go back to sleep. The goal of implementing sleep improvement strategies and healthy foundational habits is not to stop a baby from waking up. The goal is to encourage the baby to transition between these sleep cycles seamlessly with little to no parental assistance while still maintaining age-appropriate night feedings. And I'll get into that as well. So what are age-appropriate night feeds? And what is the definition of sleeping through the night? There are certain books on the market that talk about babies sleeping 12 hours in the first 12 weeks. And that, in my opinion, is just setting parents up for failure and putting unrealistic pressure on already stressed caregivers. Experts generally consider sleeping through the night as sleeping 6 to 9 hours, which doesn't developmentally happen until about 6 to 9 months of age. I have heard doctors, pediatricians say at the 6-month well visit that, okay, your baby's weight is good. Your baby can stop eating overnight. Now, is that developmentally appropriate? Technically, yes, especially again, if their weight is good, but keep in mind that that is not every baby. And then the question is, if I want to stop feeding my baby overnight and they're developmentally ready to do that, how do I do that? So again, how do we encourage babies to sleep these longer stretches while maintaining age-appropriate night feeds? We start with practicing independent sleep skills. Now, in many cases, babies are struggling to independently transition between sleep cycles because they may be relying on assisting sleep associations to help them get back to sleep, such as feeding or rocking, bouncing, holding, etc. And there are ways to slowly move away from baby relying on these things to make the transition a little easier on both the parent and the baby if sleeping away from your baby is your goal. And keep in mind, these associations, I'm doing air quotes right now, are completely normal in the newborn stage. So I discourage parents from going down a rabbit hole of thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z when my baby was a newborn. No, newborns need lots of soothing. But as they come out of the newborn period, their brain is maturing and their sleep patterns are changing. And we want to make sure that these right here are not the only ways the baby can fall asleep. Therefore, we want to start introducing more independent sleep associations. So how do we do that? First, we like to set up a sleep conducive environment for the baby by making the room as dark as possible using blackout shades and curtains. And really, this is to minimize any and all distractions that could prevent baby from falling asleep or back to sleep. Looking at a shadow or a stream of light coming in through the window or a toy in the corner of the room will be much more fun than falling asleep. Next, we want to use white noise to mimic the sound of the womb in that earlier newborn period, and also to block out any other noises that may startle baby awake. According to research, the ideal sound level is about 50 decibels from where the baby is sleeping. There are certain decibel testing apps you can use to check the level for safety. The one I have is called Decibel X. And what you do is pull up the app on your phone, place your phone in the baby's sleeping space, like the crib or the bassinet, turn on your white noise machine, and then read the level on your phone. Again, we want to remove all distractions. So that even means mobiles hanging over the crib or any night lights that may flash or shine stars on the wall. A great place for a mobile. I know a lot of people, they're so pretty and, you know, it's decorative for the nursery. A great place for a mobile is above the changing table to minimize the wiggliness that babies have while changing diapers. Of course, we want to also make sure that the baby has a safe sleep space. This means a crib or a bassinet with a fitted sheet only. Next, we want to make sure that the baby has safe and comfortable sleepwear for both naps and nighttime. Not only is it used for warmth, this also sets a good cue that sleep time is coming. And finally, develop a consistent pre-sleep routine. It doesn't have to be long, but over time, this routine signals to them again that it's sleep time. Babies love predictability and they like to know what's coming next. So if parents have been using some of those assisting sleep associations we looked at earlier to get the baby to sleep, and maybe they want to change things up, here is an example of a phased approach that people can use to transition to more independent sleep. In this example, I'm using feeding, but it also applies to rocking or bouncing, etc. So what we're doing here is just slowly moving the feed a little bit further away from the time that you're laying them down in the crib. It could be over a couple of days or a couple of weeks, whatever feels good, so that they're just a little bit more awake and more aware of where they're being placed before falling asleep. So you can see in phase one, you're doing the whole routine and then doing a final fill-up feed, laying them down in bed. All right, next, phase two would be doing the routine, doing that fill-up feed, and then you're swaddling them up. So maybe, you know, the goal there is that by just laying them down on a changing table, swaddling them up, that's sort of rousing them a little bit before you lay them down in bed. Next, putting on the diapers and PJs, doing the fill-up feed, read them a book, then put on the sleep sack, and then lay them down in bed. And notice I'm saying sleep sack here because as they get older, we would transition from swaddle to sleep sack. And finally, phase 4, where you're doing a bath, you're just putting them in a diaper, feeding them, and then you're doing PJs, books, sleep sack, and laying them down in bed. Okay, so additionally, we want to follow age-appropriate wake windows in order to help determine the ideal time to put baby down for sleep. A wake window or wake time is the amount of time a baby should be awake between sleeps to avoid under or overtiredness. If a baby is undertired, there won't be enough homeostatic sleep pressure built up for them to stay asleep for a restorative amount of time. And on the flip side, if a baby is overtired, that adrenaline spike hits and it just becomes much more difficult for the baby to fall asleep and stay asleep. Now, I typically find that a baby has a certain amount of hours in their sleep bank. So let's say that's 14 hours. You would want 11 of those hours to be nighttime sleep, leaving 3 hours left for daytime sleep. So of those 3 hours of daytime sleep, you would want to sort of evenly disperse those hours out. If your baby needs 2 naps a day and that first nap is a mega long 2.5-hour nap, there won't be enough sleep pressure to have them take a good long restorative nap later in the afternoon, which will cause overtiredness by the end of the day, making bedtime more difficult, which can cause more night wakings. Okay, so to recap these steps, once we've created that nice sleep conducive environment and we're watching wake windows, you can start practicing independent naps starting with the first nap of the day and then move on to the second nap of the day. This is a transition. Again, the goal is to lay the baby down for sleep from an awake state and implement age-appropriate soothing strategies, such as picking them up until they're calm and then laying them back down, or maybe you're offering just some crib side soothing with chest pats or forehead rubs, or as they get older, giving the child the opportunity to figure it out a little bit more on their own while offering reassuring check-ins, setting that firm but loving boundary. And finally, stay consistent. This is absolutely the hardest part, and that's why I do what I do as a sleep consultant. Having some support and guidance in all of this definitely helps families. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about sleeping safely and independently while also maintaining a strong breast and chest feeding relationship. It is possible. First, some fun facts about human milk and how it relates to sleep. Human milk contains tryptophan, which is an amino acid used by the body to make melatonin. And as I talked about earlier, melatonin helps develop the circadian rhythm, letting the body know when it's time to sleep. Hormones such as prolactin help lactating parents adapt to the stresses of caring for an infant, including broken sleep. Lactation hormones also influence maternal nurturing behavior and desire for proximity to the infant. Daytime human milk can act a lot like a cup of coffee for your baby, rousing the baby from a good night's sleep. According to a study published in Nutritional Neuroscience, throughout a 24-hour period, breast milk changes its composition of nucleotides, which are chemicals that affect baby's sleepiness. And 2 of these spike during daytime hours, which help perk the baby up. So something to keep in mind is if you pump, you may want to feed the baby milk that coincides with the time of day it's expressed. Breast and chest feeding reduces the risk of SIDS. According to a study in Pediatrics, any breastfeeding for 2 to 4 months, even combined with formula, reduces the risk of SIDS by about 40%. The risk is further reduced in babies who receive human milk for longer. However, it's not 100% clear as to why it reduces SIDS, but it is believed that human milk fed babies wake up more easily than exclusively formula fed babies. So that may be one reason. Additionally, babies also receive immune benefits from human milk, which can reduce their risk for viral infections, and viral infections can increase the risk of SIDS. Excuse me. And finally, the best one, not necessarily related to sleep, but kissing your baby will change your milk to boost their immune system. When you kiss your baby, you are sampling pathogens on their skin, which are then transferred to your lymphatic system, where you will produce antibodies. These antibodies will then pass through your milk to your baby and boost their immune system. So while we're implementing strategies to get our babies sleeping longer and better, we also want to make sure we are maintaining and protecting milk supply. So let's talk about some ways to do that. First, sleep when your baby sleeps. I know, don't roll your eyes at me. Whenever parents can though, try to take a nap at the same time as the baby. If you are still on leave or stay at home with your baby, offer the breast more often during the day. I wouldn't be too concerned with stretching out feeds to make sure the baby is going longer without eating. The best thing to do to keep up supply is express. Try to feed the baby before and after every nap to keep their tummy full while also stimulating milk production. If you're a working parent, try to mimic this by pumping more often or sneaking in 5 minutes here and there with a hand pump. Next, allow your baby to cluster feed in the evenings. Evening hours are a common time for fussiness, and it may seem like the baby is never satisfied. First of all, that is normal during the first 10 to 12 weeks. However, you may have thoughts like, I just fed you, how can you be hungry again? Don't fight it, lean into it. Allow baby to breast or chest feed as long as they want during this period. Remember that it's temporary and it's stimulating milk production and tanking the baby up before bed. I usually recommend to avoid outings during this time of day or making special plans. Settle in with snacks and a movie and let that baby eat. Consider feeding your baby before you go to sleep, otherwise known as a dream feed. Around 2 to 3 months old, you may find baby's bedtime starts to get a little earlier, maybe around 8 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. If you yourself go to bed at 9 p.m., you can feed the baby while they're still asleep with the hopes of getting a longer stretch of sleep for both of you. Plus, it's signaling to your body that you still need more milk. I usually only recommend a dream feed in the newborn stage, as it can stop working as the baby gets older. Another way is to find a daytime baby walker. This doesn't necessarily have to be someone you hire. When you ask for help, you may be surprised as to how many people are willing to give their time. Once you get past the first few weeks, you may notice that your baby can go a few hours without eating. So find someone you can trust who can take your baby out for a walk after a feeding session, and then you yourself take a nap while your baby enjoys some fresh air. And finally, keep your baby close by at night. Using a bedside bassinet can make night feedings a little bit easier and more convenient, especially if you do some prep work. So for example, you can prepare a middle of the night diaper changing station on a bedside table with diapers, wipes, a diaper pail bag, a towel for laying your baby down on, and snacks and water for yourself. This way you can take the baby right out of the bedside bassinet, lay them down on a towel on the parent bed, change the diaper, breastfeed while sitting up in bed, avoid laying down to avoid falling asleep, and then put them right back down in the bassinet. Additionally, if the parent is pumping, it's a great idea to have everything ready to go on the bedside table. Have a cooler to store extra milk, the bottle warmer ready to go, bottles, and the pump hooked up, of course, and again, snacks and water for yourself. I breastfed 3 children for more than a year each, and these little things really helped to make my nights a little bit easier so that night feeds were less time consuming and we could both go back to sleep more quickly. You can also try implementing shifts with your partner, but you need to do so in a way that protects your supply. So here are a couple of variations of what you could try. One partner can take a baby, be on baby settling duty, and one partner is on feeding duty. The non-lactating partner could sleep on a spare mattress in the baby's room, while the lactating parent sleeps alone in the parent bed. You may want to consider wearing earplugs or using a white noise machine so your brain doesn't feel on alert the whole time. The non-lactating partner would then take care of settling the baby for any non-feed wakings and then bring the baby to the lactating partner for a feed every 3 to 4 hours, or maybe like 2 to 3 hours for newborns. Another option is to split the night into 3 to 4 hour chunks. For example, the lactating partner can leave a bottle of milk for the other partner just in case while they're on duty from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then switch off for the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift. In order to protect supply, no shift should really be longer than 4 hours. If you occasionally need a guaranteed longer stretch of sleep, you could do shifts from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. every once in a while. But just be sure that you add in an extra pumping session after your long stretch of sleep to avoid signaling to your body not to make milk at that time of day. So I started this presentation with a quote, so I will end this presentation with a quote. So we have some time for questions. I know it can be hard to get up every day and have these little people rely on you. I know it's hard to feel like sometimes your world is so small. I want to remind you, you are the world. You are the world that those little ones revolve around. You are their nurture, their home, and their comfort. You are everything to them. And I hope even on your hard days, you know how special you are, especially to your little people. And that was said by the very famous Anonymous. Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking forward to taking some questions.
Thank you so much, Jenna.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions for Jenna? You can feel free to unmute or put it in the chat and I can read it. There's a question in the chat. Are the bedtime phases used for different ages?
So really, when I can go back to that slide. Okay, so phase 1, that was really like day 1. That's probably your routine day 1. And probably your routine for quite a few weeks. And then phase 2, you can start that like 8 to 10 weeks old. And then phase 3, 10 to 12 weeks old. And then by 14, 16 weeks, ideally the goal would be where it's much more separated. However, you can start if your baby's already 3 months old and you're just wanting to change things up. You can use this phased approach really at any age.
Great. And the next question, Kim Collard from CLC Maine Families Home Visiting Team Lead for the Bangor area. I've seen dream feeding only used for slow to gain babies. In what way do you use it and what does that look like?
So dream feeds are sort of like hit or miss. Sometimes they work to give that longer stretch of sleep, and sometimes they don't work. So if it's working where perhaps your baby is going to bed at 8 o'clock and you're going to bed at 10 o'clock. So before you go to bed, you take the baby out of the crib, you're not really waking them up. They're still in that deep phase of sleep. The first 4 hours of their night sleep is going to be their deepest phase. So if it's within that first 4 hours, taking them out of their sleeping space, feeding them, they're probably still asleep, and then laying them back down with the hopes of maybe they'll go an extra 2 hours. So, you know, it's really hit or miss. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily work, especially if, so that's why I usually recommend it for just the newborn period. Once you get past the newborn period, you know, 4, 5, 6 months, it could lead to that becoming more of a habit. And they may start expecting you to come in and do that feed early on in the evening. So really it's hit or miss, but I've definitely seen it used to stretch sleep when not really necessary for weight gain. Oh, okay. Just reading Kim's comment.
Okay, I'm getting Mary, you're private messaging me. I don't know if you wanted to do it publicly or if you're asking me to answer those privately. So if you wanted to ask those questions, you can just put it to everyone and then I can read it in the chat. Are there any
Congratulations to Jillian, officially a mommy to a 1-month-old. Very cute.
Are there any other questions?
So do you have tips for older babies and toddlers? So that depends. I mean, it varies on lots of different stages, but typically, you know, around 6 months, 6 to 12 months, that is really when, you know, if your goal is independent sleep, I want my baby sleeping in their own space, in their crib, not waking me up, then it's really about, you know, setting that boundary, you know, working on breaking any of those associations that they may have. Perhaps, you know, they've been rocked to sleep for 6 months and now are moving away from that. So that's typically what I do as a sleep consultant, working with families to work on strategies for that. And there are different ways to do that depending on families' comfort levels, whether that's just checking in with them to make sure everything's okay, like you're fed, you're dry, you're okay, I love you, it's sleepy time, and then doing like check-ins every once in a while, or perhaps you're if you're just transitioning away from bed sharing, for example, then maybe you are sitting next to the crib or sleeping on the floor in their room, so that they it's a slower transition of separation there. And for toddlers, it's really about a whole other gamut of things. You know, it's not necessarily about, you know, I never really use the term sleep training. I just don't like the connotation it has. I prefer improvement strategies. But it's really not about like letting your kid cry it out anymore. It's about, for toddlers, it's about connection. It's about autonomy. It's about choices. So for toddlers, there's definitely a lot of different strategies that I use that include like changing up your whole evening routine, even before you start the bedtime routine, to build that connection, so that they feel, the toddler feels safe and secure enough, and you know, they're in that stage of like, I'm independent, yet I really want to be your baby. So there's a lot of emotional strategies to include with toddlers. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, feel free to email me. Let's see. We have floor to ceiling windows in our baby's room, no direct sunlight. Are there any situations that not having blackout curtains might work? So if you're asking like, is it possible for my baby to sleep without blackout curtains? Yeah, it is. It may be harder depending on the child's age. Like if your baby is in that 4, 5, 6 month range, and I find that that's really a time where like super, super dark blackout is really key. You may want to consider like using another space for naps, perhaps. Naps are usually more difficult than nighttime sleep. So if you have like a well-ventilated walk-in closet that could double as a sleeping space, that could be an option as well. But, you know, like, for example, my children, we have blackout shades in every room, but when we go someplace where they don't necessarily, they're going to be 6, 4, and 2 next week. When we go someplace where we don't necessarily have that, you know, they still know how to do it. Okay, do we have permission to use one of your slides as a handout? I wanted to share. Yes, that is totally fine. And if you need, Amanda, if you need like a link to slides, or if anyone wants like a PDF copy of a particular slide, I guess just email me or Amanda and I can get that to you.
Yes, I will put our email in the chat. Okay, so there is one question I can ask that I just wanted some commenting on for you, Jenna. So the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine supports breast sleeping with mother and baby sleeping safely together. It's an evidence-based protocol. The Mother Infant Sleep Lab at Notre Dame supports this as well. So they just wanted to comment and for you to add your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like it's personal choice. If you are practicing safe bed sharing best practices, then by all means, if that is what your, if that is what feels good to you, if that is what is working for you, then my personal opinion on that is don't fix what's not broken. However, if it is impeding your lifestyle, if sharing a bed or sharing a room with your baby is just, maybe you thought that is what you wanted and it's just not working for you, or that's just how it ended up and now it's really not working for you, then these are some ways to move onto more independent sleep. But personally, I believe personal choice.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Jenna? You have a free sleep consultant here, so utilize her.
See my windows. Oh my goodness.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, Jenna, that you feel like you didn't get to put in the, oh, we have a question. What is cluster feeding?
Yeah, so cluster feeding is basically when it mostly happens in the evening hours. It also coincides with a time that you may be here called the witching hour or hours. It's in the evening hours, and really it's like when your baby just never seems satisfied. You feed them and then 10, 20, 30 minutes later, they seem hungry again. And so they're just constantly feeding. And prolactin levels drop at nighttime. So you don't make as much milk at nighttime. So what the baby is doing is really, what's the word I'm looking for? Stimulating your milk production, making sure that they get enough milk before bedtime. And, you know, it's completely normal. I find that a lot of parents will fight it. So, you know, it seems like baby wants to eat. And maybe they're handing the baby off to their partner and saying, you know, I can't calm the baby, maybe you can calm the baby. And of course, it's really important to, you know, take turns so that someone can take the baby so that the other partner can just like take a breather. But you know, I find that a lot of parents will say, well, it's only been 30 minutes. They can't possibly be hungry. But, you know, don't worry about, they have to go 2 hours before eating. You know, just lean into it and just let it happen. And just sort of know that it's temporary and that this too shall pass.
Looks like we have a hand raised from Daniela. Unmute yourself. Oh, you have a little baby with you.
Hi, yeah, sorry. It's funny because I had my almost 3-month-old baby napping during this webinar, and then just like 10 minutes ago, he woke up. And so that actually relates to this question. Seemed like he was napping for about, let's see, you know, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Then he woke up. Like, what would you suggest? Just, you know, obviously he was crying, so I picked him up, but should I just, you know, like hang out with him, kind of see what he needs? I checked his diaper. I had just fed him. But for the next nap, like, would you recommend waiting a certain amount of time or just kind of reading his cues before he gets drowsy?
Yeah. So he's 3 months?
Yes, almost 3 months. Yep.
Okay. So, you know, one thing, 3 months is still really young. You know, I don't really expect a 3-month-old to be able to transition seamlessly between those sleep cycles, like sleeping 30 minutes, waking up, and then falling back to sleep on their own. That definitely takes time, takes practice. Developmentally, closer to 5 months that you might see that happen. So, you know, you have two options. So if was he in his own sleeping space? Was he in the crib or something? Okay, great. So you could either like attempt to get him back to sleep by, you know, just picking him up and then putting him back down and soothing him that way and getting him back to sleep in the crib, or getting him back to sleep by just sitting in a rocking chair with him, or like just whatever, a contact nap. Or you could just you could move on with your day and say, okay, that was a 30-minute nap and we'll do the next nap later. And for a 3-month-old, I typically recommend about an hour and a half between sleeps. If the nap wasn't like fully restorative, maybe you want to go like an hour and 15 minutes. I know it sounds like nitpicky with the minutes, but it really, 15 minutes can make a huge difference in between just a tired baby and like an inconsolable baby. So, you know, you have some options there. Does that help answer your question?
Does. Sometimes it's like, I would like, my husband's working, so just even talking to someone like about the options is helpful.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Feel free to email me whenever you want. There was another question I saw here about what would be helpful for a mother going through depression and anxiety? So first of all, I recommend talking to your provider if you are experiencing depression or anxiety. I had postpartum anxiety and I didn't even know I had it until my first child was like a year old. I just thought it was normal new parent worries. But if you're not sure if you are experiencing postpartum depression or anxiety, I feel like postpartum anxiety especially is not talked about as much. Do a little bit of research about what that means, because a lot of times postpartum anxiety comes out as rage. And, you wouldn't really think like, oh, I'm angry. I always give this example and my husband rolls his eyes, but I'm so angry that you didn't load the dishwasher the right way. Maybe I shouldn't be, this rageful over the dishwasher. That's sort of what triggered me. I was like, something's going on here, I think. But research like what are the symptoms of postpartum depression and anxiety, and talking to your provider, number one, that's going to be really important. Join some support groups. And if you're not sure where to find them, connect with people like us, like Amanda and Kara. And, if you're in Maine Mother & Co., Birth Roots, there's lots of support groups around. So definitely getting into one of those. And then also making sure that you are getting outside. Making time to just go for a little bit of a walk, making sure that you're talking to your partner about what you need, be specific about what your needs are, how they can help you, how they, you can get a break. So there are a variety of ways to help manage all of that, but for sure, it's definitely hard.
Great, and I think we have just one more question, Jenna, and then we can wrap up.
Okay.
So would you be willing to talk more about putting baby to bed before they get drowsy? Is that just based on a schedule, or are there signs to look for?
Okay, so there's always sort of a battle between like, are we doing wake windows or are we doing sleepy cue signs? And sleepy cue signs would be things like yawning, rubbing their eyes. A lot of babies will get like red eyebrows, like rosy or flushed eyebrows, where it almost looks like they're getting a rash. So those are some standard sleepy cue signs. However, every baby is different, and that's why I usually like to go by wake windows. And I have a wake window guide on my website, remedysleepcoach.com, that it goes from 0 months to 3 years, how their wake windows increase throughout time as they get older and are able to withstand more time, more alert time. Because some babies, I yawn all day long. Could I lay down and take a good restorative nap? Probably not. So some babies will yawn. remedysleepcoach.com. Lorenda. So some babies will yawn and rub their eyes in between their naps, and maybe that is not actually a right time to put them down for a nap. Sometimes if a baby is undertired, they will take a short nap because there wasn't enough homeostatic sleep pressure built up. So using the wake window guide is sort of just a good guideline for you to use. In terms of a schedule, I mean, there's really no schedule with babies in terms of by the clock. Really, I don't go by the clock in terms of a sleep schedule until they reach toddler years, where, adding more wake time doesn't affect them as much. And going back to sleep cues, another reason maybe not to use sleep cues alone is because some babies don't show them at all until it's too late. So that baby may be just like, you know, giggling and laughing, and then on a dime, they'll be overtired. And what that means is they're experiencing a spike in adrenaline, and maybe their bodies are stiff and they're arching their back, and there's like no calming them down. So that it can go from 0 to 60 very quickly. So that's the story on schedule versus sleepy cue signs. And it does seem weird. I've worked with parents that, like, you know, if you're used to putting your baby down asleep and then all of a sudden you're putting them down in a crib and their eyes are open, and, you know, some parents are like waiting by the crib for their eyes to close. But if you have the right environment set up, you know, the white noise, the blackout shades, your routine, and you're practicing this and you're working on it, it's not going to happen overnight, no pun intended. It does take time and practice for them to get it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Of course.
Lots of information. I'm going to put in the chat our website that has the rest. The webinar tomorrow is a tongue tie panel, and then on Thursday we have our coalition meeting on solo lactating parents will be the presentation. So please join those if you can, and all these will be recorded also and on our website. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Jenna. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
our supporters.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.